Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Just Crunch It. Today with us we have Anoop Jawahar. Anoop is the head of engineering at Sundial, and previously he was a director of engineering at a company you must have heard of, Nutanix. Well, Anoop is very interesting for me as a guest because he is working on a tool that is a very interesting take, a platform that is just going after the world of insights and consumption of data to derive knowledge out of it, to derive like actionable inputs out of it in a very interesting way. I am super excited to host Anoop today, and I think we have some very interesting questions. We have just had a chat with it. So as we dive into the episode, you are going to enjoy it. Welcome to the show, Anoop. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks for having me here. Really excited to do this call.
No, pleasure is all mine. I think it took us a while to finally record this, but I'm glad
Yeah.
we made that happen. Anoop, I have a bunch of questions I want to straightforward jump into, but of course, I want to just like start this the way I start with everyone. Like when you look back on your career and all the roles, all the different things you've handled, it's one thing to say that you are a head of engineering. The title doesn't change, but there's like zillions of smaller things that keep on coming up, challenges, pivotal moments that shape your career. The reason you chose to work at Sundial or to build Sundial, uh, life at Nutanix. Like when you look back on all of it, how how would you describe what Anoop's life has been like? What were some of the most pivotal moments, or like how's your career shaped up so far?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. Yeah. So if you think about it, I worked in this industry for around 15 years now.
Hmm.
A long part of that was at Nutanix, right? And at Nutanix, I dealt a lot with data systems, right? We
Yeah.
were working on database internals, key value stores, etc. It was also the place where I entered into a little bit into an engineering management role.
Yeah.
And then I started observing patterns, right? And there are two patterns that I want to call out, which I think defines my engineering life, right? Is this one is the data systems, right? One is data systems and how it has evolved over time. I've seen how things evolve from just files on a system to key value stores to SQL DBs to cloud data warehouses, and I saw that every year the abstractions levels were increasing. That's one part of it,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to work at a higher abstraction level, and that's what took me to Sundial, right, where we were solving data insights problems, how to automate insights, etc. The other part which defines me is related to the engineering management side. It is how similar is like organization design with respect, like how similar it is to designing systems, large distributed systems, right, globally distributed systems. There are so many patterns which are very similar. I sometimes wonder whether systems came from people design, or organization systems designs came from system designs. It's so there are so many common things, and I like using the concepts from each places in each other. That's something which I can go into a lot, but yeah, these two things define a lot about me.
No, I love it, and I have one very silly question maybe. So were you handling data
Hmm.
also at Nutanix, or was it a complete shift?
It was a big shift, frankly. In Nutanix, I was handling databases, right? Like we were building, like we were pretty much building out internal databases, which were based out of open source databases like RocksDB, Cassandra,
Yeah.
etc. We go pretty deep into it, right? And even Postgres, go pretty deep into it. We pretty much rewrite some of the protocols for strong consistency and achieving very large scale. It was the core metadata layers for Nutanix's various products.
Yeah.
So that's what I worked on. From there to data systems for OLAP and analytics and insights was definitely a big shift for me. But
Perfect.
I'm loving it. Yeah.
No, and it shows up like, so the conversation I had with you, I want to put it on record. Like it's one of the best conversations I have had with people who have come over as guests, because we were very deliberate and like, hey, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, and like it's reflecting on all the things you're talking about, system design, and then the granularities therein. I want to pretend like a 5-year-old, because of course at Crunch we also do a bit about analytics, but I want to like assume here that I know nothing, and I have some very basic questions and then some very like obviously out of curiosity questions. And these questions, Anoop, in full disclosure, the reason we started Just Crunch It was because I would go into these conversations with enterprise leaders, and there was this sense of, hey, AI has come in, everyone is saying data needs to be utilized in a better way, or there are people who are able to make sense out of data, business is being challenged, revenue is being slashed. There's this sense of like being left out, which they could not publicly talk about, because while they were feeling that they don't have enough knowledge to understand and take the best next step, They couldn't, of course, talk about it. These companies have like millions and millions in budget assigned for AI implementation. No one knows what to do with that, like, right? Like, should it be? So a lot of these thoughts made me realize that, okay, if we have a very frank conversation on things that no one talks about without really pinpointing the finger to any one enterprise or any one stakeholder, it's probably going to benefit everyone. And that's the intent. Like, I want to create a sequence of like 25, 30 really good master classes of sorts where we are diving deeper into one topic. So starting with that intent, my first question to you, which is obviously, and then this is of course in alignment with whatever you are doing at Sundial, a stakeholder in any company, they use the term insight very freely, right? Like they're, oh, let's get some insights, let's see what insight is available. And
Yeah.
oftentimes companies don't have insights. Like they have dashboards. Dashboards are not the same as insights.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of problems or reasons why, as to why those insights are not available, right? Like, so could you like imagine that a new company is shaping up, a new enterprise is shaping up, or an enterprise is willing to revamp everything it has around its data. It wants to be very heavy on insights. Like, what is the bare minimum needed to be able to generate an insight first? And because you are like, you have led engineering on this aspect, it's okay if you have to like go into the nuances of, let's say, technical aspects as to why an insight matters. But I want to understand, like, instrumentation as a term gets floated around very freely. People are like, hey, and then when you give a dashboard to someone, I've seen very good business leaders also ask questions like, why is my revenue going down on a dashboard in Mixpanel, which maybe has no data about whatever is happening in Salesforce. And
Yeah.
I can't blame them, because for them the question is right. Like it's somebody probably should have figured out a better way of communicating it. So can we just start with that? Like, how,
Yeah.
like, what is the bare minimum needed for an insight?
Got it. Got it. So yeah, I'm an engineer at the core, so I might go a bit deep into engineering to
Please
stop
go.
me, come to higher level, etc. So where do you start this, right? So I feel before jumping into instrumentation, right, the most important thing to decide or finalize is what's the insights you are looking for. What key business metrics do you need to track? What are the levers of your input metrics which can drive your output metrics? What entities of your business is most important to track? Is it users? Is it accounts, products? And what dimensions do I need to track to slice and dice these entities and metrics? Is it country, platform, user age, engagement level, etc.? Do you need any form of near real-time analytics? Do you want to use data to embed data-driven features in your product? But we'll stick to just insights and analytics for this conversation.
Yeah.
So the instrumentation question should be guided by these. What is your key metric? Is it ARR? Because you are a SaaS business with large ticket sizes. Is it growth metrics like weekly active users? Is your product a weekly product, daily product, etc.? So these are the first questions to answer, or the data modeling, or is the first question to answer before jumping into instrumentation.
Yeah.
Now, getting into instrumentation, the choice of tool then is completely based on how much engineering time you have, how much infra cost are you ready to take, and how long do you have to set these instrumentation up. It's a big trade-off game between these things.
Yeah.
For the best insights, you need to own your data. For that, I believe that you need a warehouse or a data lake house. Depending on how much engineering time you have, right, you can choose between a warehouse or a data lake.
Yeah.
This is where data from different sources will land, and it is essential because this warehouse is essential because you need to connect different data sources and generate deep insights.
Yeah.
Now, then you get into collecting the data, right? For collection, I would definitely recommend using a logging layer and a data extraction layer. The most popular ones here are Segment, RudderStack, Fivetran, Airbyte, etc. With these, you're set to
Yeah.
start collecting data so that it can be used for insight. And then you need to have well-defined data governance systems.
Yeah.
Most of these tools provide them. Doing this early on is essential. I've seen a lot of companies not doing this early on and accumulating a lot of tech debt. This you understand, right? Like this is the primary standards, the schema definitions, attribute definitions, what patterns to follow, etc. The data cataloging, etc.
Yeah.
And and from here you can then pipe it into a warehouse, or if you don't want to use a warehouse, pipe it into an analytics tool like Amplitude or Mixpanel. But there's one key aspect, right? Like before generating insights, the core task is to map your raw data into metrics, entities, events, and dimension. I think this I'll get into a lot more. So post data collection, you need a modeling layer to model and map data into events, entities, metrics, and dimensions.
So I
want
to get to the entity and dimension bit in just a while, but like, so if I'm not oversimplifying, and correct me if I am, I think like what you're essentially saying is that any leader needs to understand whatever is their North Star metric, or like what is that one thing that they really care about. So for a CRO, it could be, let's say, ARR. For maybe a CEO, also it could be ARR. For someone who is a product person in an enterprise, it might not be ARR. Sometimes it's actually user retention, or it's just adoption of a certain feature. It could be different things. But in a established enterprise, there could be still like 3-4 different directions to chase, and all of them are very different. Like the CRO function, the kind of questions that they want answered, they are very different from, let's say, what the CPO wants
Yeah.
answered. Do you recommend like having a unified system as opposed to like CPO team using something else? Because of course, when you are trying to instrument things, if I'm instrumenting how many users onboarded in two different tools, maybe the entry itself is different. Like I'm getting 98 users came on board in tool 1 and 99 users came on board in tool 2. Like how does it work? Like
Yeah.
how should a business leader think about stitching it all across different verticals? Because in an ideal world, of course, it should be all one, but is it practically feasible?
Hmm. So I think there are two parts to this question. There's two sides of the question. About the one tool problem, I feel single source of truth is a really big problem in companies. So it's essential to have a single source of truth, and that's where a warehouse and well-modeled data can play a big role. The other part about the CRO versus the CPO versus a product manager in a smaller team, etc. Right. So what we at Sundial did, like it is a slightly related topic, that which we had to actually map out the personas who
Yeah.
are consuming data, right? And if you see all these people, the CRO, the CEO, the product manager, business, the data scientists, all are craving for data. And we have categorized this into like three personas across a spectrum based on how much they understand and are comfortable with data. The first persona is the data practitioner. This is the data scientist, data engineers who are good with SQL, understands the event data schema in depth and its nitty-gritties, etc. They're comfortable writing SQL queries. Then the data savvy persona, these are the product managers you talked about, the business team folks who are well versed with data-driven insights,
Yeah.
data analytics models, how to apply them to take decisions on their particular feature, etc. And third comes the data consumers. These are the CROs, CEOs, right? They want to consume the data insights generated by these other two personas, which is
Yeah.
data savvy or the practitioner. They generally don't want to explore data through self-serve, not familiar with tools to explore data or insights, but really want to consume data to monitor and take decisions.
Yeah.
They usually prefer and trust the other two personas to give them the insights. So what I'm trying to say here is the tool which will win this market needs to be for all these three personas, which also means the metrics need to be in a single place, or the source of truth needs to be single, and the tool needs to solve for all these three persona, which is not an easy problem. That's the reason we have this tool sprawl in this domain, right?
Yeah.
Because they all try to cater to these different personas.
Yeah, I like when I think about it, you see like companies like Snowflake and Databricks, they have become so big and they're growing at a rapid pace. It's very obvious that now, like if you're doing anything in data, you're probably competing with the two of them in one form or the other. Somewhere there is a component in their product which is like exactly what you're trying to build in a way, with
Yeah.
one sort of a lens. But like I can't also think of any other vertical which has as many complex things. Like you can't, like if you
Yeah.
drawing a parallel of like, hey, is there something, let's say that the field team and sales uses it, it's very tough to do it. But okay, without digressing, if I step back and go to how do we actually generate an insight, right? Like you talked about entity, you talked about dimensions, and like there's a lot of raw data, right? Like so when I
Yeah.
say, hey, sales, uh, as a company, maybe we have decided that sales means net revenue, or as a company we have decided that sales just means closed deals. It could be anything, right? Like so how do you map this, like the raw data that is being generated, or every company has its own lingo? Like could you dive a little deeper into what you think is like the right practice here?
So yeah, like I mentioned, once you get your data, modeling your data is like a really key step to build automated insights or derive insights, right? And there are very after the modeling, there are very clear templates based on your business type, and even for the metric modeling, there are very clear templates. If you're a SaaS product, consumer subscription, e-commerce, etc., there are some core metrics that are common across these industries. So, but as an data engineering or engineering person, we had to build some abstractions or constructs, and to which any data can be modeled.
Yeah.
And these are four, like these are entities, events, metrics, dimensions. Let's start with entities. Like
Yeah.
the most easiest example of an entity is a user. If you're a SaaS product, it's an account or a workspace. But it's not just that. You can actually model several things into entities, right? Product ID or it can go on, right? Like it's but at the core, what it is anything you want to track events, features, metrics against.
Yeah.
And according to your business, you can map your entities out. Then there are these events, right, which are actions taken by your entities, like edited a doc, shared a photo, watched a video. It can go to anything, right? Now from here, you model this into metrics. Now this is a more popular construct. So any growth, any metrics, right? It could be daily active users, retention,
Yeah.
weekly retention, engagement metrics, ARR, etc. And then, or the last part of this class construct is the dimension. This is also a very popular concept. A dimension is an attribute by which you filter or group an entity, country, language, acquisition channel, etc. So
Yeah.
all this for your business, there would be different things which maps to these things. But identifying and mapping your data into these constructs takes you a long step towards building an automated insights layer or deriving insights more quickly.
Got
Yeah,
it.
that's what.
Could,
Yeah.
could you take a few examples of, let's say, e-commerce company, right? Like, or a
Hmm.
retail company? Like, what is an entity for them? I just want to ensure that we are
Hmm.
catering to the non-SaaS world as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, for an e-commerce, definitely there will usually be two entities, right? One is the buyers and sellers. If it is an e-commerce platform, a marketplace like platform, right? There will be buyer is an entity, the seller is another entity,
Yeah.
right? You could even have product categories as entities if
Okay.
required. And then when you look at metrics, you probably are looking at cart conversion metrics, right? Like
Yeah.
what is the weekly conversion rate?
Yeah.
So that's a good example, right? So these are the entities, these are the metrics, and the dimensions would be product category is a common dimension used, and the events would obviously be like checkout event, right? Checkout event, or sometimes visited a product page event, are the events you would generally track, and there could be a huge list of these.
Got it.
So you need to map out the most important things for
But
your
but but
business.
but I still have a question here. So let's say I have mapped it out, and to my
Yeah.
point of how we define, uh, let's say internal lingo is that sales, right? Like, and sales could
Hmm.
mean net revenue, it could be net
Yeah.
entity sold, it could be anything, right? Like, because ultimately I'm getting all of this raw data, and my business term is very internal. Like, companies, uh, even today when they're like releasing their quarterly performances or yearly performances, there's a very different definition that they have. Like, they explain
Hmm.
what that definition is, and standardization maybe is very tough because people just use it internally, free flowing. How do you map that? Like, how do you where is that segregation coming in? Like, how do I define revenue to how do you define revenue?
So your question is primarily about how do like different companies could have different definitions
Yeah,
of
no,
ARR or
yeah,
GMV.
or for that matter, let's say the CFO in the same company,
Hmm.
when they look at revenue, they mean very different. Like, the CFO is maybe talking about realized revenue, whereas the CRO is maybe
Hmm.
talking about booked revenue, right? Like, and
Hmm.
ultimately the raw data is still the same. It is a different kind of filtering or a set of operation that you're performing.
Got it.
Where is this logic baked in? Because the CRO is also going to look at a widget that says revenue, and the CFO is also going to look at a
Hmm.
widget which says revenue, but it could
Yeah.
be different things.
Yeah. So of all the data modeling aspect, I think revenue is the most complex one. I think product analytics is still more standardized. I understand what you're talking about, right? Like so today, usually the revenue data comes from common tools, right? Like there are Stripe, there is Revenue Cat, which is used by consumer subscription. In case of e-commerce, mostly it comes from some order ID, order tables, etc. But the key thing is there are some standardized way of standardized metrics even for these, right? The CFO usually understands this. Like there, like you said, bookings is a different metrics from ARR, MRR, and you're right that different companies configure revenue metrics very differently, right? Like you said, some companies want to recognize revenue at the time of booking. Some will call a revenue churned only after the booking, like the subscription ends.
Yeah.
Some will call it churned as soon as you cancel it.
Yeah.
They will not count it after that, etc. So most in the product setting, we have to make these things configurable. It's true. Revenue is a complex piece compared to the other pieces. So, but this all comes down to the modeling piece, right? And I agree that revenue metric modeling is pretty complex.
Yeah.
But
So
finally, it comes down to some form of SQL modeling. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
so these modeling tools, right? Like, there are a bunch of them that
Yeah.
have popped up. I'm talking
Yeah.
about things like At Scale, DBT Labs, which
Hmm.
full-fledgedly just go in and say that, hey, so if you have an Excel sheet, revenue for you could be column one plus column two minus column three, and I'm talking in very high-level terms, right? Like, I'm not going granular
Yeah.
here, but it could be column one plus column two minus column three. Revenue
Yeah.
for a CFO could be column one minus column two plus column three. Could be anything,
Yes.
and they help you do this at scale. But you are an
Yeah.
engineering leader, and I've seen it's not like DBT Labs has become the biggest company that exists out there. Like, if everyone is using data, it makes so much of sense to have this context layer built, but people have still found out ways of thriving. And internally at Crunch, and this is me being very transparent here, we were once
Hmm.
discussing internally that if AI is actually going to play a role where we see all of
Hmm.
these tools coming in and saying, hey, the analyst is going to get augmented or get replaced, whatever the case may be, the AI needs to know what revenue is. So if Vikram is
Yeah.
typing in the question and Vikram is a CFO, the AI needs to understand what Vikram means when he says revenue. And
Hmm.
that can only be done when you have a semantic layer very well defined, right? Like, those makeshift arrangements that you had might not really cut it for you
Yeah.
in an AI first world, does that mean that in future you will see every company building a semantic layer, whether they build it via a tool or in-house? Uh, First of all, it was very counterintuitive for me to notice that, oh, a lot of these bigger players, like even companies with tens of billions of revenues, they have no semantic layer whatsoever. It's just a team of
Yeah.
analysts who have the context in their head or in an Excel
Yeah.
sheet that is not up to date. But do you see that happening? Like, do you see semantic layers picking up, or is that wrong from an engineering leader's POV?
Hmm. No, you're right. The short answer is you're right. I do see it picking up. But the long answer is that, like, let's start with the DBT bit, right? So you're right that DBT is great. It's a great tool for data engineering, analytics engineering, or analysts. But it does not solve the problem of making these data consumable, explorable to the data consumers or the data savvy. It does not force a clean semantic layer or a modeling layer which maps to the product or business constructs like entities, metrics, etc. They are trying to build a metrics layer, but that's not a full. It's not fully built out yet, right? Or a semantic layer or a clean semantic layer.
Yeah.
The key end result is insights, right? Not just data. The insights bit is still missing. The semantic layer is still missing in most products, right? Which is the one of the main reasons to collect and model all this data, at least from an analytics and insights perspective.
Yeah.
That's the end goal, right? And so yeah, it does reduce the dependency for analysts and analytics engineering on core software engineering, but it doesn't solve that problem. Semantic layers have to come up. This ties back into that question of building abstraction layers, right? For the data side, the abstraction layer is now going to be the semantic layer and the insights layers which you build on top of it. It's time, right? It's time to reach there. And we have seen this in all across history. I can take several examples of programming languages, web app building, which has kept building abstraction layers such that now it's easy for anybody to build a web app, or languages can be picked up by software engineering languages can be picked up by anybody today because of making them really easy to use, etc. So it's definitely missing and it needs to come. The AI part is a totally another beast of a topic, because AI, specifically the current LLM models, has just upped the game on automation, right?
Yeah.
In every domain, right? What used to be just forms and knobs driven automation has suddenly shifted to just natural language as being the de facto input for automation, right? And in every domain this is happening. Everybody is bringing in a chatbot, a natural language search interface. But analytics as an industry, where is an industry where accuracy is very, very important. The accuracy of data is critical, right? Trust is extremely important.
Yeah.
Self-serve data platforms have also failed because business teams only trust their analysts or data scientists to have the right metric or insights numbers. So in that world, building trust in AI is going to take some time,
Yeah.
building all the guardrails, checks, and balances, but it's happening, right? The core calculations, the data operations, insights model still probably has to be non-AI driven code, but on top of that, several things can like easily be done by AI. You talked about large analyst teams. I've seen this in a lot of companies where they keep increasing their analyst team sizes and still not able to serve their business and product teams. So that's one area definitely AI is going to make things easier. Retrieving best recommendations based on your data questions, ideas on how to analyze or like analyze data to drive a decision can easily be done or recommended by AI. Though in those areas, I see AI tools popping up for sure and doing a really good job there. And it can put together a report fairly quickly, given the right semantic layer. And yeah, there are different parts. Like there are different companies coming up in different areas, right? Assisting in modeling or mapping your data, or cleanly mapping your data to business models, is a like it definitely will be AI assisted, but not be fully automated, right? Because of the requirements for accuracy. Same for SQL or code generation. It has to work in an assistant model or a co-pilot model where it can generate the code for you, but a human probably has to validate it today for high accuracy,
Yeah.
especially for data.
Yeah.
This is what
So
I feel.
man in the loop, or analyst in the loop, as we call it, is like also the most popular path that companies who work with us at Crunch prefer for obvious reasons, and we also have that as a recommendation. But I wanna
Yeah.
like dig a little deeper. So if you're talking about AI and automation, I remember us chatting about deep insights, right? Like first of all,
Yeah.
could you help us understand like how do you categorize a deep insight? Like what is a deep insight? Is it the same piece as an insight? And then uh, okay, analyst in the loop, or like let's say a SQL tool has someone also in the loop. Maybe that in the loop aspect uh, exponentially decreases over time. There's still like just
Yeah.
someone reviewing bulk of it. But do you think deep insight is automatable? Like what are your thoughts there?
Good. So this is my day to day today, right? So it's a good. Let me get into that. So. So insights, right? It's a spectrum, right? The insight spectrum from simple to deep insights, and you can find companies who find simple insights as deep, etc. Right? So companies, I feel in general, the companies are at a very early stage of the spectrum. They have very few companies going to deep insights today. So it can start with simple things. This is I'm not joking, but seriously, it can start with simple things such as filtering or breaking down a metric by various
Yeah.
dimensions, to month over month, day over day change insights, to RCA insights, right? Like cost of change, what caused this metric to spike or dip, mix shift, share change, to complex insights like retention analysis using J curves, aha moment or analysis, which is like a correlation analysis model, or cohort analysis, etc., or churn prediction models, right? So it's a very large spectrum, but we believe a lot of this can be automated, and the key is to model your data into those constructs I mentioned. So you need to model your data into metrics, entities, events, and dimensions, right? From the engineering front, like you want these constructs to behave a certain way. The data is a time series data, or things like the entity daily status table, right, which has the daily dump of what the entities did or events performed, etc. So if the data schema has a common pattern, then you can build these deep insights libraries on top of it, right? Such that it can work on any metric or entity or event of any company, etc. Right? I can take some examples if you want. Like,
Yeah.
so if you think about it, I want to check month over month. It's an insight which I want to check on all metrics, right? It could be from on your ARR or your weekly active users or your cloud cost for that matter, or cloud cost metric, or your bug fix rate. So you can see these are generic insights which can apply to anything.
Yeah.
So these are definitely automatable, right? Once you model your data into metric or entities composition analysis, right? Or share change, like did people like, or like, I don't know, maybe I should shift that to cost of change, right? Like it's a very common requirement. Like your cloud cost increased by 10%, or your weekly active users increased by 10%. What
Yeah.
caused it? Was it? It's a segmentation analysis problem. So if you design your metrics into a common schema, you can build automated insights libraries which can apply on top of it. So it is automatable, and yeah, you can get into even deep insights which can be automated around these constructs
But
if modeled the right way.
from an engineering point of view, like, does it make sense to be very specific? Like, would you rather be a tool that's the best one when it comes to, let's say, revenue related insights, as opposed to being a tool that is doing an okay job because it's applying like the statistical models and identifying these pattern breaks, and then maybe surfacing out insights, or maybe looking at historical data? Like, how does it shape up from an engineering POV?
Got it. So this is where I think Sundial, I think we have a lot of systems engineers, and when we were given this problem, we tried to break this out into system problems. But to get your question specifically, I think it needs to be both. Right? This is where I'm going to combine what I said now with also the persona problem. The persona, which is the data consumer, which is like the leader, CRO, etc., wants very specific insights. They want revenue specific templated insights which answer revenue related analytics questions.
Yeah.
Same, right? But these are what we call as templates or very specific insights. So at Sundial, you can layer these specific insights, which is a combination of generic insights. Right? I said the generic insights are month over month change, cause of change, trend analysis, alerts, etc. You can put a bunch of these together to create a specific insights, which is around retention analysis. But we do have specific insights around retention, revenue, etc. But it is mostly piecing together the generic insights platform to create a template on top, which can answer this question. So we are building this like a platform,
Yeah.
which has these generic insights libraries, and at the same time we have templates which answer specific questions for a specific area, for a specific domain too. And yeah, we want to build this like a platform from an engineering point of view, and that's the goal.
But I see a lot of tools being really good with smaller volumes
Yeah.
of data, and when the volume of
Yeah.
data goes up, they're all over the place. Is it just because there's like more noise with, like, let's say, an enough data, like a very large data set, or is it also like, I understand that the system will take more time to go through the same data and identify something for you, so it's okay. Like, let's say I'm not bothered by the system being slow. So what answer I was
Yeah.
getting in like a minute, if I get it in 30 minutes, I'm okay with that. Systems still break when you're dealing with large volumes of data. Like, why does that happen?
Yeah. Good question. So yeah, so this is a good question, right? We talked about modeling and everything in generic insights libraries. Now doing this at scale is another beast of a problem, right? It's another challenge altogether. I've seen these common trends among companies. They start off logging data into amplitude mix panel. It's great to get started. Takes you a long way. Some organization do use segment or redder stack, route things into warehouse, set up a looker or a tableau, etc. uh, like as the scale grows, the two things which happens, right? One is this tooling bill grows a lot,
Yeah.
and this slowness problems, right? And they're basically their ETL pipeline starts breaking up, and it's very common, right? You see this a lot. So, but if your metrics, entities, dimension tables, like they're not well modeled on your warehouse, you are definitely going to have a large warehouse bill. The Tableau looker models need to be built, really need to be built on well modeled, aggregated entities, metrics, dimensions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're looking at a very slow looker or Tableau and a very large warehouse bill. So this does happen. So really, like that's where I say, right? If any of these are not well engineered, your data insights will suffer.
Yeah.
You will be looking at large bills and less ROI. Because the core job of modeling the data, connecting several data sources, etc., is still a complex data operation. And at
Yeah.
scale, it's to make it repeatable, reliable, and scalable is a tough engineering problem. And this usually requires a highly talented data platform and data science team.
Yeah.
So that's what I've seen generally. So and at the same time, companies are not ready to invest a lot in their data platform team until not a lot of them do until very late. Then they start building these large talented data platform teams to build tools internally.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and like, it's a different problem. It's a different beast of a problem for sure. And most companies end up with these 2,000 pipeline, 1,000 tables, metric tables with thousands of dashboards, which nobody likes to look at. So it needs to be engineered really well, and it's not like a simple problem which tools are solving today well, for sure.
Yeah, but you've again and again talked about the stage at which you start implementing this. Like in a way, just
Hmm.
now as well, you were saying like it needs to be thought of at the right time. What is that right time? Because
Hmm.
a small company, up until Series B, I just spoke to someone last month. Very like
Hmm.
I'll not name them, but one of the best startups in the country. They are like probably one of the fastest growing ones as well. And we were talking about a
Hmm.
bunch of data problems. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is a problem. Oh yeah, this is also broken. This is also broken." But then
Yeah.
they made a statement. They were like, "Vikram, there are so many low-hanging fruits for us in all directions that from your POV, when you are pitching crunch, of course you see data as the only thing that matters. But from our POV, every direction we
Yeah.
move into as a Series B company, we have a lot of things that we can fix,
Yeah.
and all of them impact the revenue. So consciously what they said was that we know that the system that we are on is like less optimum for now, but we'll probably
Hmm.
continue with this up until Series C, which is where we'll probably bring
Hmm.
in a bigger team to fix this problem. Is that like a wrong mindset? How
Yeah.
do you see it? Or like, yeah.
So I think the core problem could be that the company is not very data driven, right? Like if the leaders are not very data driven, they tend to start this process pretty late, right? And the second problem is that even if they are data driven, the budget which goes to the data team will always be lesser than the budget towards the problems in the core product, right?
Of course.
Especially at the early stage. So, I mean, as you all know, today, you would rather use a tool for anything which is not related to your core product, right? And you need tools like cloud, right? I can talk about tens of things like which are away from your core product, but you need it, so you just buy a tool for it, right? And which is easy to set up. But the mistake is not being data driven from beginning, right? And that is something which is changing. The big companies have shown what being data driven, the ROI it can give you. Companies like Netflix, Facebook have shown what it can do to your business. But still, there are companies which are not data driven and they get into it pretty late. So there are two parts to this: the mindset of being data driven. The second is it not being a core part of the problem, core part of their part of their core product.
Yeah.
So and there are no good tools which converges all the the data tool requirements. Right? There are like 10 tools you need to set up together to get to insights, which people don't want to get into.
But
So
Anup,
I believe there's a gap. Yeah.
yeah, but Anup,
So.
enterprise or let's say team culture aside, from the
Hmm.
players who are building it, like there's so many tools today that
Hmm.
exist in this space, and still everyone is poor in like in
Hmm.
terms of information. Like they may be data rich, they're
Hmm.
really not well informed. And then we have all of these shifts happening. There's AI popping up. We just talked about analyst in the loop. Like to everyone who's building out in this space and let's say thinking of starting up, what would you recommend? Like, what is it that the newer tools, newer platforms need to do? Like, are
Yeah.
we looking at a very intelligent man in the loop sort of tool, and should it also be like teaching people what needs to be seen? Because if AI comes in and let's say data analysis is really democratized, which is what I have seen a lot of companies say that they're working towards data democratization. Today, data leaders themselves struggle with consuming data and deriving information out of it. Tomorrow, where data is democratized, you will have a larger audience, like everyone in the company would probably want to. And then that's okay, that's great that everyone has access to information, but that can also create problems because everyone will interpret it in the wrong way. And then there would be just like a lot of panic from an
Yeah.
org to org level for no reason. Like, how do you see this whole future shaping up? Like, what should a builder be thinking about today with reference to the future?
Uh, yeah. So there are two parts to this. Definitely, there is a tool sprawl problem, right? So we need to converge the tools for sure. I think the builders need to converge the tools. We have seen this happen in different parts of the industry, right? Like I'm borrowing something from Dheeraj Pandey, who's the CEO of Nutanix.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
We built this hyper-converged infrastructure, which was converging networking and storage and compute. I used to take the example of how iPhone converged the camera, a telephone, your note-taking tool, all into one. So that convergence probably needs to happen in the data layer too, because there are too many tools managing them across, connecting them across. It's just not working out, right? And it's difficult to manage all this. So that convergence is one thing which needs to happen for sure. And where is this headed, right? So the convergence is one for sure. Second, I feel is the abstraction layer. The next is, like I said, okay, we are all at SQL today, right? Even DBT is nothing but a wrapper over SQL, but we need to build a higher abstraction layer, which is of insights. Like, what if the functions instead of SQL, the functions are trend function or month over month change, and the storage is not just rows and columns, but it's metrics, dimensions, entities, events, right? And then these insights functions can then apply on top of it, and then you build these insights abstractions, which is taking it closer to the consumer, data consumers, right?
yeah.
So that abstraction, the convergence, is two directions in which the tools have to go. And the last part, yes, the AI has brought a tectonic shift into how this is all consumed, right? It can assist in almost all of the modeling, report creation, with just like where you needed probably a 10-member team, now you need just one or two to do this whole thing together with AI assistance. So this is the directions or dimensions in which the tools should move in this world. And that's what has happened to everything in tech before this. Yeah, except
A-
AI is the big shift. Yeah.
any up and coming project that you are really excited about? Like, doesn't have to be necessarily about data. Like, if it's about data, great. But is there anything top of your mind which you're like, hey, these guys, like the take that they have could be very interesting? On that note, Sundial itself is like a very interesting take. I started with that, so
Yeah.
I'm very bullish on the whole space in general. Let's see how it evolves. Like, analytics product space also is like getting a little crowded, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it's, interesting products. So obviously, right? If I think about it now, it's just the different things coming up in the AI side. It's just every day it is surprising us, right, with new ways of using AI in different places. I don't think we can just yeah. It's there's limits. There's no limits to it now. So I don't have any specific examples right now. But definitely, I keep reading up on all the new things coming there, and it's definitely exciting what's happening there for sure.
Perfect. Perfect. Anoop,
Yeah.
this has been a very fun chat. I usually ask this
Yeah.
question, and I know we have talked mostly about data, but this
Hmm.
question, this particular question, is open. Like, it doesn't have any context. Like, you can go wild with it. Any learning
Yeah.
as you reflect back on everything that you have gone through in life that you would want to share with someone who's listening in today?
Wow, that was a tough one. Okay. That's
Yeah, I intentionally keep this for the end, but
learning. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, recently thinking about, and this is well known, but especially for the young folks, right? I mean, it's just the concept of compounding in everything in your life, right? The concept of delayed gratification in everything in your life. Now, how this manifests is, uh, yeah, we tend to underestimate the effect of compounding. The best way to explain this is through the finance stuff, right? Everybody knows that, okay, yeah, invest early, the compounding effect is crazy, so just start investing a little bit early and you will see magic happening after 10 years. Now this can be easily explained through math, but the same thing is never applied to your skills, to your learning, etc. You can just keep at it little bit by little bit every day, and this compounds, right? How much you know, the layers you form compounds every year. and the only way to achieve greatness is through that compounding effect in the area you love. And this also requires to understand the compounding effect, and the second is delayed gratification. There's no quick wins, so keep at it, like slowly compounding your skills, your learning, or whatever you do, and you will see results. This is something I think everybody should learn right from the beginning, and can do magic in your life.
Yeah, no, I
That's what
am
I do.
100% in agreement, and I have myself realized it. I have preached it to people as well, and once in a while, I have myself panicked where I shouldn't have for different things.
Mm.
But I think like the statement, one sentence that like really sums it up well for me is, we often underestimate what we can do in 10 years, and we often overestimate what we can do in like a month or in a year.
Wow,
So
that's very well put.
yeah, so it's like very deep, and I have uh, learned that the hard way. Perfect, Anoop, this was a fun chat. I wish we could continue on and on, but hopefully part two of this, where we talk about like, so I wanted to be very intentionally very granular here, so that this
Hmm.
episode serves the purpose of like bringing on board someone who has like some very basic, if you go in and pick like a random group of people and talk about entities and dimensions and metrics, most of them would still be confused despite using them on a
Sure.
day-to-day basis. We are bad at like bucketing it or looking at it in the form of a concept. But thank you so much for doing this. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, wants to learn about Sundial, in general, say hello, where should they reach out? I will put the links in the description.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will send you the links definitely, and my email ID, etc. So people can
Perfect.
reach out.
Yeah. In case someone is working on data and they want to just like say hi, hello. Once in a while,
Yes.
interesting conversations have popped up, though we are still fairly small as a podcast. So we'll see how this goes. Anoop, it was an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Same here. I really enjoyed the talk. Yeah, it was fun time.